Okay, just imagine this for a second. Imagine your entire life, since you were a kid, you've been told you're the next Messiah. You are the world teacher, here to save humanity. Millions of people are literally waiting for you to speak. And then, right at the peak of it all, you get up in front of everyone and just say, nope. That is the incredible story of Jiddu Krishnamurti, a man who was handed a destiny and chose to walk away from it all.
And this quote, wow, it gets right to the absolute heart of his entire philosophy. Before we even dive into his life story, just let that one sink in for a moment. This is a man who was groomed to be the ultimate teacher, the ultimate leader, and yet he spent the rest of his life trying to convince people that they didn't need one. So, how on earth did he get to that point?
So where does a story like this even begin? Well, it's not in some grand palace or a sacred temple. No, our story starts on the banks of the Adyar River in southern India. It's right in the shadow of the headquarters of the Theosophical Society, which was this kind of spiritual movement that blended Eastern and Western ideas. And they were on the hunt for a new Messiah. They just had no clue what he was going to look like.
I mean, just look at this. The contrast it's just staggering. On one side, you have the reality of what they saw, this quiet, sickly, kind of unremarkable 14-year-old kid. But on the other side, this massive, world-changing spiritual prophecy. To anyone just looking at him, there was nothing special there. So why him? Well, the answer was based on something you couldn't see with your own eyes.
And get this, it all came down to this one guy's assessment. Charles Leadbeater, a pretty high-ranking and, frankly, controversial theosophist, claimed he was clairvoyant, that he could see people's spiritual auras. He takes one look at young Krishnamurti and declares that his aura is perfectly selfless, the purest he'd ever seen. And just like that, based on this one mystical vision, a Messiah was chosen.
So, the prophecy is in place, and now the real transformation kicks off. Krishnamurti and his younger brother Nitya, who he was incredibly close to, were basically plucked out of their simple Indian life and thrown into a completely new world. A world of intense, controlled training, all designed to shape him into the perfect spiritual leader for a Western audience.
And this timeline here, it just shows you how crazy fast his world was turned upside down. In 1909, he's just a boy playing by a river. 2 years later, by 1911, he's been adopted by the Society's powerful president, Annie Besant, and is living in England. Fast forward another decade, and he's living a life of unbelievable luxury, even spending summers in a Dutch castle. He was taught everything, from how to use a knife and fork to public speaking. But this life of privilege, it was really a cage.
Krishnamurti himself, who later referred to himself as K, talked about just how suffocating this was. Every little thing he liked was turned into an unbreaking rule. I mean, can you imagine saying you fancy a bike ride, and then you're forced to go on a bike ride every single day for the rest of the year? He learned pretty quickly to just suppress his own desires, to not want anything. And that lesson, well, it would profoundly shape his future ideas about the self.
So for years, he goes along with it. He plays the part, he gives the speeches, he follows the rules. But then, two things happen. Two massive events that would just completely shatter this world that was built for him and force him to find his own truth, a truth that had nothing to do with any prophecies or saviors.
The first crack in the foundation, it came from within. Out in Ojai, California, a place he really grew to love, he went through what he called the process. It was days of intense, agonizing physical pain that ended in this incredible mystical experience. He felt this deep, profound connection to everything, a unity with all of life. And this is so crucial. This was his own spiritual awakening. It wasn't something that was orchestrated by his handlers. It was his first real taste of a truth found inside himself, not given to him by someone else.
And the second event, this one is just an absolute tragedy. His brother Nitya, his best friend and constant companion, got seriously sick with tuberculosis. Krishnamurti was, of course, completely distraught. But the leaders of the society, his spiritual guardians, they assured him with total, unwavering certainty Nitya was protected by divine masters. He would not die. They promised him.
And then, while he was on a ship sailing to India, a telegram arrived. The news was blunt, devastating. Nitya was gone. In that single moment, everything just broke. It wasn't just the awful grief of losing his brother, it was the shattering realization that these spiritual authorities, the people he had trusted his entire life, were completely and utterly wrong. His faith in them, and really his faith in the whole idea of external authority, was just destroyed forever.
That loss, the death of his brother, it just lit a fire inside him, a profound inner rebellion. He started questioning every single thing he had ever been taught. And finally, in 1929, After 20 years of being groomed for this role, he stood before 3,000 of his followers at that Dutch castle and gave the speech that would change everything.
And this was the first bombshell he dropped. Truth, he said, is a pathless land. Now, that wasn't just some poetic line. It was a direct rejection of his entire life's purpose. He was basically saying no guru, no religion, no organization can give you a map to the truth. You have to discover it entirely for yourself.
And he didn't stop there. He took that idea to its next logical step. He completely dissolved the worldwide organization that had been built just for him, the Order of the Star. He argued that the second you try to organize a belief, you kill it. It stops being a living truth and just becomes a dead dogma. He was, essentially, firing all of his followers.
So why? Why do all this? Well, he laid out his reason right here. He saw that people were looking to him for their own salvation, making their own freedom dependent on him. And his only goal, he said, was the exact opposite: to set people free. Free from all saviors, starting with himself.
And that was it. He just walked away. He gave back the castles, the money, all of it. And having taken apart the cage that was built for him, he spent the rest of his long life just exploring what true freedom actually is. So what did that message look like? What did he spend the next 50 years sharing with the world?
You know, what's amazing is that his core teachings flow directly from his own life experiences. His call for freedom from authority? Well, that was born in the crushing grief of his brother's death, when he realized the Theosophists' promises were empty. His belief that truth is found through direct observation? That came from his own awakening in Ojai, an experience nobody could give him or take away. He argued that to find truth, you can't rely on anybody else. You have to learn to look at your own mind and the world without any judgment.
And for over half a century, he was just relentless. He wasn't a guru looking for followers. He was more like a philosopher demanding that people think for themselves. He traveled all over the world, holding these public talks and having deep conversations with some of the top thinkers of the time, like the physicist David Bohm. He also started these really unique schools, not to spread his own teachings, but to create places where students and teachers could explore what it means to live a life without fear.
He taught his entire life that he, the speaker, was unimportant, that his words were really just a mirror for you to look at yourself. So the final question isn't really about his message. His message was always, be a light unto yourself. The real question he leaves for all of us is this: what happens when you decide to actually look for that light, without a guide, without a map, completely on your own?